I've always been fascinated by people and their beliefs. Now, it doesn't mean I respect everyone's beliefs. They have a right to have them. But I'm fascinated at the beliefs that some people will latch onto, and they do so without any evidence whatsoever. And they will just literally grab something and pull it out of thin air to explain something. And when you counter them with evidence, they're offended at you. They're upset with you because you've rattled their faith. And I've never understood that way of thinking. I've always been a person that I wanted the facts and evidence in front of me, and my beliefs have always just been irrelevant to me. It's like, I could believe a whole lot of things, doesn't make them true. I believe the wrestler Harley Race was one of the toughest dudes that ever lived. And from what I heard, outside the ring, he was a tough guy. But in the ring, the results were predetermined. The 7 world championships that he won was decided by a group of promoters that said, let's put the belt back on Harley. So I can believe all day long that he was a tough guy, but I have to accept the reality that he was a tough guy in a world where he was allowed to be one. So I'm okay if someone says to me, hey, that's predetermined, right? You know he didn't really win those, right? Someone else decided it. I'm okay with it. I understand where my beliefs stop and where reality kicks in. But not everybody can think that way. Not everybody is able to do that. And ever since Kamala surged in the polls, and ever since she dominated Donald Trump in the debate, people out there are just looking for any reason to explain this away. Instead of just looking at the facts of the situation, they're trying to pull things completely out of thin air and claim that there must be some other greater force at work here, because there's no way she could have done that on her own. There's no way. And in this next clip, this MAGA pastor honestly believes that there's some sort of demonic force that is guiding Kamala. And I laugh because it's just that ridiculous. But take a look.
Seeing now is a real Jezebel. You're going to see a lot of people saying that. It doesn't, it's like Pentecostal 101 when you've got somebody operating in manipulation, intimidation, and domination, especially when it's in a female role, trying to emasculate a man who is standing up for truth. You're dealing with the Jezebel spirit. What was accomplished was she can look presidential, and we'll go to this later. That's the seduction of what I would say is witchcraft. That's the manipulation of imagery that creates an impression contrary to the truth, but it seduces you into seeing it. So that spirit, that occult spirit, I believe is operating on her and through her, similar to with Obama, that there's a kind of an angel of light, charisma. You can see it at the DNC. And so when you're up against that, the good news is if we're going to go full tilt Pentecostal, Jezebel may be the spirit you're up against, but then Trump has like an Elijah mantle on him, probably from the intercession of 1 million Christians. We've got to lean into this thing because the Elijah mantle can break the spell of witchcraft off America. God can tear the veil, and unless that veil is torn, we have a lot working against us.
Okay, first of all, I grew up in the Pentecostal church, and I just want to say right out of the gate that I have absolutely zero respect for that guy's beliefs or anyone that entertains it. Anyone that would sit down and give that guy the time of their day and believe what he's saying to be true and actually make donations and donate money to them, I just couldn't. There's no way I could ever respect that. But I did grow up in the Pentecostal church, and I have read the Bible. I've studied it my whole life, and I still read it and study it to this day. And the reason why I do is because of people like that who are just constantly getting their own book wrong. He wants to talk about Donald Trump as standing up for the truth against this Jezebel. No, Donald Trump is not standing up for any truth. Donald Trump is not running on a record. He's running from a record. Donald Trump is a guy who said that he's never asked forgiveness. He's never brought God into that part of his life. Whereas in the church I grew up in, I was taught that forgiveness was the very foundation of all faith. You had to be forgiven first. You had to bring God into that aspect of your life. That's what you were required to do. Donald Trump is not up there standing up for the truth, and there's not demonic spirits flowing through Kamala Harris. He just got his ass handed to him because people are tired of him. But if that guy actually did study his book, there is no reference in the Bible anywhere that in the last days there's going to be a billionaire that's going to be a sinful dude, and he's going to be, he's going to sinful like King David, and God's going to call him to then rule over governments and install Christianity into the government. There's no Bible to back that up at all. Where they're pulling this from and how they're twisting this, I have no idea. but I know that I've read the Gospels, I've read the book of Revelation. There is no reference anywhere that anyone is going to save the day in the end times other than Jesus Christ himself. What it does talk about is a lot of antichrists who are going to come along and are going to deceive, according to the Bible, the very elect. They will deceive the smartest of people, and they will do so by claiming that they're fighting for Christ, by claiming that they're one of him, but they're not him. So Kamala at no point has claimed that she's fighting for Christ. There aren't people on our side of the aisle comparing her to King David and saying she's been called by God. None of us are saying that. It's the people on the right. It's MAGA. They're the ones who are saying, oh, yeah, God has called Trump. God is like King David. God is like the Apostle Paul. We've heard all their ridiculous arguments, but they don't have any Bible whatsoever to back that up. And that belief system right there is one of the craziest ones I've ever seen. But now we're going to shift to another ridiculous endorsement, if you want to call it that. So it's not really. But Joe Rogan was praising Kamala Harris. But I want you to listen to this clip because I've never heard anyone praise someone in such an underhanded way, and he too thinks there has to be some kind of force behind her. There has to be some sort of puppet master. It's ridiculous, but yeah, I put Joe Rogan in the same boat with that dude. Take a look.
I just want to say, whoever's helping her, whoever's coaching her, whoever's the puppet master running the strings,
Yeah.
you did a fucking amazing job.
She did a great job.
They did an amazing job from the moment Biden drops out, forcing Biden to drop out. Right, whatever they're doing, whoever's writing those speeches, getting her to deliver them, coaching her, she's nailing it. She nailed that one speech. She's like, "Say it to my face."
Oh, yeah.
And everybody's cheering.
Yeah, she nailed it, dude.
And then last night, to me, when I was like, oh my God, this is jujitsu, where she's like, if you go to his rallies, his crowds are boring, they're tired,
They're
they
all
all
leaving
leave
early.
My crowds are the best crowds.
Oh,
I have
yeah.
the number one
Yeah.
crowd. He couldn't help himself.
And she got him. She baited him on that. She walked him right into it.
100%. 100%. See, the difference in that debate was not a difference in like who's going to have better policies, who's going to be better for the country. The difference in the debate, in my opinion, was who was better prepared.
Mm-hmm.
She was way better prepared.
Yeah.
And even when it came to answering tough questions, instead of answering, she would just say things that she believes.
Yeah, sure.
And they sounded real good.
Yeah, that's
the soundbite.
That's called.
So yeah, there must be a puppet master. There must be somebody writing all of this and scripting all of this and coaching her on how to act it out. That has to be what's going on. There's no way that she could just automatically be smarter than Trump. There's no way that she could figure out how to outsmart Trump on her own. There has to be somebody behind the scenes pulling the strings. That's so ridiculous. Now, I'll be the first one to admit that everybody who's ever run for an office anywhere has advisors. They do have people that coaches them. They do have people that helps them along. I'll give him that all day long. But Donald Trump is obviously not listening to his, and if he is, he's listening to the wrong ones. He's listening to the ones who are telling him to go out there and double down on everything, and he's pushing people away. But that was one of the most underhanded praises that I've ever heard, because it's like she's not smart enough to outsmart Trump on her own. Any of us could outsmart Trump on our own, okay? He's not a smart guy. He's a guy who has to stand up there and talk. I've never heard a president in my lifetime talk more about being smart than Trump. And he'll say it's because he had an uncle at MIT. That makes him smart. And he will sit there and tell all these ridiculous stories and then say that he's weaving them together and he's brilliant and he's making this brilliant point. And yet when he got on the debate stage with Kamala Harris, every time she baited him, he walked right straight into it because he did not have the restraint to dial it back. And yeah, I know Kamala has advisors. I know there's people that's helping her along. Everybody that's ever run for an office has it. But to insinuate that that's the only way that she could beat Donald Trump? I mean, Donald Trump. You think she had to have that much help to beat that moron? Let me say this. If Kamala was having to run against Barack Obama, then yeah, she better have a really good team to really coach her, okay? If she was running against Hillary Clinton, you would have to really be savvy to beat someone with that kind of experience. But we're talking about Donald Trump. We're talking about someone who is just an over-the-top, unhinged moron who is so vain and so fragile that if you just mention his crowd size, he will crumble. He's still talking about it. He's still out there upset over that comment. It got under his skin so bad. Every time she baited him, he went for it. Now, did she have someone that might have gave her some advice? Okay, even if she did, Joe Rogan, even if she had someone giving her that advice, it's painfully obvious that Donald Trump is that fragile and that vain that anyone could have said that. Anyone would have gave her the same advice, and I'm pretty sure she could have figured it out on her own, because anyone who's ever watched or studied Donald Trump for any amount of time realizes that all you have to do is bait him, and he will walk right into it. So here are these dudes who are sitting back watching a woman rise to power, and they realize they're about to be led by her. And so now they're trying to explain it away by either saying, A, there's demonic forces at hand, or B, there must be some sort of puppet master, because there's no way she could be this smart on her own. It's such an insult to Kamala Harris. She's one of my favorite candidates that I've ever seen. Time will tell what kind of president she makes, but I think that she's got a completely different temperament than Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, Bill Clinton, anyone we've seen in the past. Kamala has a completely different approach, but it's a brilliant approach when you watch it. The way she's going about it, the way she's not letting herself be baited into these race arguments, the way that she's not allowing him to get control of the narratives, she's baiting him and she's playing him like a cat and mouse. And it's brilliant to watch. And I think she could pull that off regardless. I don't think that she has to have a puppet master, and I don't think there has to be demonic forces to help her do that. I think she's going to be an effective president and leader. She's been an effective vice president. I think she's going to be a great president once she's in. But there's going to be mediocre white dudes sitting back trying to figure out how it all happened. How'd she beat Trump? How in the world she do that? Anyone paying attention to how Donald Trump carries himself could beat Donald Trump. I feel like he is the most... Now, I know a lot of people say this is a stretch. I realize he's good at creating chaos. He's good at creating a bunch of, carnage. But I think he's one of the most easily beatable candidates ever, and it should never be this close because he's so fragile and weak. I've never seen a more fragile, weak dude, and I've never seen more fragile, weak dudes gather around another fragile, weak dude. It's crazy to me that that's what they pick. You would think that fragile, weak dudes would want to gather around someone who was really strong and who couldn't be baited into something talking about his crowd size. But instead, the more fragile and weak they are, the more they support this fragile, weak dude. It's hard to make sense of it, but I think Kamala Harris is doing a great job, and I don't think there's demonic forces at hand, and I don't think there's a puppet master. I just think people are sick and tired of Donald Trump, and we want to see change, and we want to close, not just turn the page, we want to close the book on MAGA once and for all.